Hey, D, guess what?
Chicken butt.
The Griffins are in the playoffs. Oh, I love it. I'm sorry. Did I say I was going to be excited and annoying about that? Because I am.
You might have mentioned it.
Welcome, everyone, to the AHL pre-show. We are going to be taking a look at a little bit behind, but mostly ahead as the playoff race here in the American Hockey League is just absolutely ramping up. Action all over the place. But before we get there, I want to introduce my co-host over to my stage left, but to my right, that's Deanna McFeron. She's rocking out in the closet / office of just absolute awesome memorabilia. I've been admiring that quietly, but yeah, what do you got for us this week?
Anxiety.
Every day I felt that in my soul.
Nah, yeah, I'm chilling in my dad's office, which is a converted closet, and there's also the Hall of Family Military Memorabilia. If you look to right here, this picture of me in the army, and then my dad, my grandfather, and my brother are also on that wall as well, along with various great uncles and such on the wall to my left. All these pictures here, and also in front of me. So
And you're also joined by me, Andrew Rinaldi, who is too scared to live up to any familial family legacy of going into the armed forces. But I'm proud being a civilian, I guess. And I'm here to celebrate. I mean, look at Jonathan Berggren. Look how happy he is to be going to the playoffs. I mean, come on, how could you not? This the adorable Swedish meatball. But it's a big deal for Grand Rapids. They haven't been to the postseason since pre-COVID. I mean, yeah, the last time they were there, no one was cognizant of wearing masks or washing their hands. I mean, no one is anymore, but they weren't even, especially back then, the last time Grand Rapids made the playoffs. And after, 2 years of sitting outside the dance and a couple of COVID seasons, the Griffins are back, baby. And it's energetic over in Western Michigan right now. It's my beat, so I'm just going to keep going on it just a little bit. And all I have to say, really add on, is that the best coaches in Michigan are named Dan. That's just, you got Dan Campbell, the
we're not
Lions,
doing Dan
America's
Campbell
coach. We
again.
are
No,
doing it
he's
again.
not. How is he
Now,
America's coach?
because now you got Dan Watson, who's picking up another franchise that was seemingly dead on the floor, and he's taking them up on a playoff run. So, the similarities are there, D. You can argue with me all you want, and you will, but I'm
Yeah, I
staying with
mean,
my point.
I feel like honestly, like your criteria for America's coach only applies to like Michigan's coach. Like I really feel
I
like
don't
there's
I don't think you understand how much America loves them some Dan Campbell.
I don't know if you understand how much America doesn't care about Michigan.
Well, that was uncalled for. I can tell you that.
What, rock and roll and cars, and they don't even make cars anymore. Or
They
rock and
make
roll.
cars. They're just not as cool as they used to be, but we're still making them. God, I work for a company that builds the factories that builds the cars. So just because everyone in Texas drives Toyotas and Hyundais and Hondas doesn't mean that we're not still pumping out Fords and Chevys like it's no one's business.
Yeah. I think you
Okay,
need to
sorry, I
come
had
down
to
to Texas to see the cars here.
I had to defend the Motor City for a little bit there, but we got, I mean, just a ton of action coming up here, folks. Obviously, if you couldn't tell, the Griffins in Grand Rapids clinched a playoff spot here, but they weren't the only ones. We had a couple teams clinching there over the weekend out in the Pacific. You got the Tucson Roadrunners that are coming back. I know that they made it technically last year, but it was like 3 games, so it doesn't really count. They're coming back to the dance, and the Ontario Reign. So as we, we're kind of getting down to the final stretch, seeing more teams piled up in, and I mean, at this stage, you got what, 7/8 of the league or something like that makes it in. So really, if you're not clinching around this time of the year, something's kind of wrong. We'll get to a certain team where there's something kind of wrong, but we're just kind of gonna keep going and rolling along with the teams that are in it, that are gonna make it. And for anyone who obviously hasn't noticed, we are kind of missing Sam Wismer this week. She's on IR, but we hope that she gets well and takes care of herself. But her Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins are kind of doing some work. And, you got Radim Zahorna with 16 points in his last 14 games. Wilkes-Barre only has one game this week coming up Saturday against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, who they seem to play about 35 times a year. So, of course, they would be playing them. But they're kind of getting rolling. Should be kind of that next wave of teams coming up here to clinch here in a minute. And I like what the Pens are doing. It's been a bit of a strange season. They had their best scorer and Alex Nylander, and Kyle Dubas was just like yeet right off to Columbus. And they're still in the mixes, and they're still in the mix. I gotta like what's going on over here in the Atlantic Division. It's just tough when you lose a top player like that in the midst of a playoff race, but they're right there in the middle of it. As we go off into the north, you want to talk about another team that looked like they were dead in the water, and they're right up in there?
The Laval Rocket.
Get some.
The Laval Rocket. Yeah, they've managed to fight their way into the fifth and final playoff spot in the north. Like I said last episode, they're doing the thing that they do where they start off like decent, and then they get just like awful, and then they're meh, and then they like claw their way into the playoffs for some reason. And yeah, they've really turned it out. They're getting a lot more, I don't know, cohesive as a team. They've got David Reinbacher, actually.
Talk about that. How exciting is that?
Well, he's one of like the top prospects that the Canadians have. There's, you can expect some pretty decent things out of the kid. It's going to be interesting to see his development. I think he's one of those players that will really benefit from being with the Rocket, just in terms of like translating his game and really finding his footing in the pros with the faster speeds and like bigger hits and all that kind of fun stuff in North America. So that's really exciting. The Canadians obviously are out of the playoff picture in the National Hockey League. So if they're smart, they just leave him down in Laval and just kind of let him like marinate a little bit for a little while, especially as there's kind of a lot of questions up in the air with like the Canadians. There's just like too much depth and not enough roster spots for them. They've got a lot of really young players already on the team. So yeah, I think Reinbacher's going to be interesting. If the Rockets stay in the playoff position that they're in and he stays with them, I think he could actually be really vital for them in the playoffs, honestly.
Absolutely. And I think over the long term, I know a lot of fans, especially for teams that are out of it, like Montreal, and these last handful of games as we get towards the end of the season here, they want to see like, okay, let's bring some of the young kids up and see kind of what they're made of and what they can do. But I think it helps so much more, especially for a guy coming over from Europe and North America, to adjust to, the speed and to the ice sheet. Obviously it's a smaller ice over here, so there's less time to make plays and move around and all that. Just the time, you got to change the timing up of your game. And for those young guys, there's going to be some of those growing pains. Now, do you want to do that against like Tom Wilson coming in on the forecheck, or maybe someone from Belleville? I think the better play for them is to put Reinbacher down there in Laval, kind of get him going and get him. I mean, if you kind of get those wheels start turning right before the playoffs and he's really starting to feel it, then it could be that thing where Laval again kind of just sneaks their way in, and now, oh look, now they're going on a run. Now they beat. I mean, the thing that's about the North Division right now is just how compact everyone is from top to bottom. Because Syracuse isn't really safe at that number 1 spot. Utica is not really out of it, even at the bottom of the division at the moment.
No, everything's like a handful of points away. I mean, like even like between like the Rocket and the Marlies, right? You're looking at like 68 points for the Rocket, 71 points for the Marlies. The Senators coming in hot. I mean, the Senators are always one of those like coin toss teams where you never really know how they're going to be doing season to season. Either they're 2 points behind the Rocket. You know, just it's everybody always talks about like the Atlantic, you know, how it's going in the Atlantic and how tight that race is. But then like you look over every single year at the North and you're like, anybody could win this division. I don't truly understand the North Division, especially with like the Rocket, who have seemed like they were out of playoff contention most of the season, and then boom, there they are. They're like right back in it, 5th and final spot, and they're playing Belleville this weekend, and just kind of like gonna be able to go wild with them. And you know, it's one of those things where I always feel like the North is the tighter playoff race than the Atlantic, but because of like the superpowers that are in the Atlantic, they get all of the attention, all of the coverage.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got, of course, the big bad Bears over there in Hershey is going to catch a lot of the spotlight between the history, the numbers that they're putting up this year. And then you got, a guy like Corey gets, rightfully so, pumping their tires every week over there on the Calder's Calling. Shout out. But there's a little more attention over there. But when you look at it, even second place in Providence at 81 points, and you go all the way down to Lehigh at 62. That's almost 20 points worth of separation between the two of those. Meanwhile, Syracuse at 78 over there at the top of the North, followed by Laval at the bottom at 68. 10 points separates 5 teams. So it's just an absolute...
It's like that every year too. And like the first round in the North is like a bloodbath every year. And you actually don't know who's coming out of those divisional rounds in the North because it truly could just kind of be anybody.
And that's what makes this so great. It's like you can almost kind of write Hershey's ticket already to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's a challenge to the rest of the Atlantic Division. But for the North, it's like, what if it's Utica? we just don't know.
Interestingly, like the North is like the one division where it seems like every team follows the same blueprint. Whereas in like the other 3 divisions, you have like, okay, like these teams have like wildly different identities. Whereas the North is still big and bruising and like they beat you down and they all seem to follow the same blueprint, which is why back to back between the same teams, you're going to see like different results from that weekend. And it's baffling and incredible, and it makes for such good hockey because you never actually know what you're going to get out of that division. It's kind of like with the Central. You never really know what you're going to get out of the Central Division in the American Hockey League. It's good hockey, and you've got like bruising hits and like ridiculous goals, but it's still one of those toss-ups where you're like, anything could happen here.
That's what makes this league so much fun, and I'm all about it. But I want to kind of shift gears a bit. Let's take a look at some of the teams that are like right on the cusp of clinching, but they're not quite there yet. But anything this weekend, a couple games going on. Number 1 is another team I'm going to kind of put on blast here for a second. The Providence Bruins. Their magic numbers down the 1. They just need a point, or they need Springfield to drop one of those this weekend. And now Providence has got road games against Utica and Syracuse, so a bit of a upstate New York trip coming up here for them. I'm going to need to see something from this team. And I know, Georgi Merkulov is kind of ripping it up on the score sheet there, but they just lost Fabian Lysel to an injury. Looks like he's going to be out for a little bit. And the Providence's last couple of showings in the playoffs, despite finishing at the top of their division both years since the COVID year, fairly disappointing. Their offense has just dried up at the worst time. And so I feel like they got to take these games here down the stretch a little more seriously than usual. Yeah, Hershey's a billion points ahead of you. You're not going to catch them. It's less about that and more about kind of, this is where you got to fix the whatever issues are in your team heading down here. You're going to be a little shorthanded with some of your star power. You got to find a way to win. There's no more moral victories for this team anymore.
Yeah, well, it's time to start playing playoff hockey.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to start using the last stretch of games to start getting ready for the playoffs. And they have, 10 remaining? So you've got 10 games to figure it out and really establish what your identity is going to be in the postseason this year if you want to win. And you have to start doing that in the regular season if you are a shoo-in for the playoffs, because otherwise you're going to be playing catch-up to a game, to a team kind of like the Penguins or like the Checkers in your division that are going to be able to carry that momentum and that energy into the playoffs. Whereas the Bruins, they tend to have that. They have that tendency to just fall apart, to crumble under the pressure of elimination.
Yeah, and I know there's, they ran into some hot goalies last couple of years. Dylan Garand on Hartford kind of shut them down. The year before, it was the resurgence of Corey Schneider appearing to be an all-world goaltender again. Remember those days? But there's only so many times where those excuses kind of hold up. And now it's like, all right, this organization has shown the ability, the staying power to be up at the top of this division for now 3 consecutive years. Got to show me something. And we'll see. This is a big character check time here for them. Another squad that I like here coming up is we're going to go over to the West and look at Colorado. Again, kind of same situation. Their magic number's 1, so you kind of expect them to clinch this weekend here. And they've just been a really interesting team. And I was well acquainted with Colorado opening weekend. Well, really the first 2 weeks. Grand Rapids had a nice little home-and-home series with them. And it was kind of a good measuring stick, I think, for both teams, because now you can see it where they've ended up in the final standings here, or near the final standings. I always love me some Ivan. And this is a team that moves quick and can make you pay, especially in transition. And their goaltending has kind of been, I don't want to say it's been all over the place, but they've had a bunch of different goaltenders. Justus Annunen was there for a minute. Ivan Prosvetov was there for a minute. Trent Miner's been taking up a bunch of starts. And it's like, no one really knows kind of, and with the Avalanche, Annunen is up there currently, but he might be back for the playoffs. You never really know with this team. So
yeah, he's up there losing to the 2023-24 Montreal Canadiens.
Listen,
what was that?
I picked him up in fantasy expecting a win, and I got saddled with a loss. So
what was that? Yeah, I'm just glad it wasn't Georgiev that he started against the Habs. I had him in fantasy, and I was like, please don't be Georgie. Please don't be Georgie.
Oh. Colorado scored a minute into the game? I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a
43 seconds, yeah, and then you're gonna let freaking the Montreal Canadiens, the 2023-24 Montreal Canadiens.
Who was even in that for him?
For the Habs?
Yeah.
Montembeault. Samuel Montembeault, the one that I call Gabriel because I don't think he looks like a Samuel.
Oh no! Put respect on his name.
Yeah, no. Samuel Montembeault was in net. He let the one in, and then played like gold medal goaltending for the rest of the but 59 minutes and however many seconds of the game just absolutely murdered the Colorado Avalanche.
Drove a stake into my fantasy playoff run. Thanks, appreciate it. So, we're going to stay out west here and look at a couple other teams that are right there again on the cusp of clinching. Their magic number is 3 for both the Bakersfield Condors and the Calgary Wranglers. Now, for Bakersfield, at first, when they kind of had a bit of a swap, Jack Campbell for Calvin Pickard, I was like, Cal Pickard has been just the picture of stability in that here in the American Hockey League. So when he left Bakersfield, I was like, oh boy, here comes the downfall of the Condors. And they're still hanging right in the middle of the thick of that in that Pacific Division that just is an absolute buzzsaw year in and year out. And, you know, they got Seth Griffith that's still there. He's still just as dependable as it can be. Bakersfield is just a team of like guys that know how to just like get it done. You know, it's steady. And I think that's kind of dangerous in the way that their structure is just it's dependable and it's bend, but it's don't break. And I think it could be very dangerous. Along with this other team over here in Calgary, after the last couple of years with what the Flames affiliation has been in this division, to see the Wranglers down there at 6, I was like, it didn't feel right. And then you look at, you know, the goaltender of the year the last 2 years and the MVP last year in Dustin Wolf. And I found it kind of hilarious because I was looking at his .923 save percentage. He's only 20, 11, and 3. And it feels like a down year for him because of just how dominant he's normally been. Now, granted, he's kind of been up there with the Flames as well, and that whole dumpster fire, no pun intended. But I feel like it's not even been his fault. I think it's just been more of the team around him not being quite as solid as it has been in years past. But when you look up and down here in the Pacific and these teams that are looking to clinch, there's a lot of like, you can pick one of these teams in the middle and be like, yeah, I can see them going on a run.
I think what we're seeing too is like this is the shift, right? This is the shift in what like modern NHL hockey is going to look like. We see it through the AHL. Teams are drafting and developing better, whereas like some teams that have maybe been like okay with their prospects, they're kind of like falling off. Like when you watch the AHL, you see that because Pickard has been so good in Edmonton. Like he doesn't look nervous at all. Like not even a little bit. Like dude looks like he's been there for years. He might, you know, he would still make some like rookie mistakes and stuff. He's a baby goalie. You gotta let him do that. But like he looks so calm and so collected, and he's been so solid for the Oilers for a second there.
I missed him in Grand Rapids, especially last year. I really missed him over there. He has a great interview. He's just a great guy. I'm so glad seeing him up in Edmonton and succeeding. Like, you go off, King. You deserve it.
Yeah, and, you know, I will protect goalies with my life. I'm not going on another goalie rant. Not today. I don't need to. I don't think.
I think we're gonna have plenty of those as we go forward in the playoffs.
But yeah, especially with like the Wranglers, right? I think what we're seeing as well is the Wranglers finding their identity as an organization outside of just being the Flames affiliate. It always takes a little while to find that identity outside of your parent organization, and we're getting that. I don't know. It's nice to see. Yes, they are the Flames, of course, but like they're the Wranglers. They're not just like the baby Flames.
Mm-hmm.
They don't play like the same style of hockey that the Flames do. They don't have like the same like coaching mentality as the Flames do, and they're just driving to win, and like get better every year, and they have gotten better every year, which is always so nice to see, because that means that those prospects are developing. And whether or not you're a fan of that team or those players, if you are a fan of the AHL, you are a fan of player development. And to see any player develop like right before your eyes is one of those things that it's incredible. And Calgary, after being embarrassing for so long, is finally figuring out the player development side of player development, I guess.
You're a fan of player development unless you're a Chicago Wolves fan in 2024. But
I'm not. So, good job, players. Keep developing. That's what we're here for.
That's the name of the game. I want to talk about another kind of. It's not an X. I mean, it's kind of an X, but when I was looking at the magic numbers and how much one team needs to, or their maximum points that they can possibly get and everything, and I was looking at perhaps the one team in this league that makes me sick every time I look at them. That's the San Jose Barracuda.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Max out at 71 points. That means if that huge team that has a worse point differential than the Chicago Wolves, if
just
they
wins
win
all of their remaining games,
they will finish with one more point than Abbotsford, who's in the last playoff spot in the Pacific. And I probably wouldn't be so critical about them if this is the third year in the row that this team has just been, got to keep it family friendly, has just been not very good. And you compound that with the fact that the parent club in San Jose has been just as bad. And you look for some hope in the pipeline. And the Cuda are so down bad that they're throwing their prospects into, like, Ozzy Weissblatt got loaned out to Milwaukee just so he can have a taste of what winning hockey looks like. It's really dark days in the San Jose organization right now.
Yeah, from top to bottom.
How does that happen?
I mean, I'm pretty sure I got ADHD. I don't even know where my car keys are right now, but I'm pretty sure I mentioned something about it on the last episode, being one of those like mentalities, right? Where it's really hard to break through the losing mentality, where it's like, we are losing, we're going to keep losing. How do we stop losing? We can't stop losing. Now we're spiraling. And with a team, this is where being kind of divorced from your parent team and their mindset and their mentality, the way we're seeing the Wranglers become, is beneficial, because when they're struggling, you're not being dragged down into those struggles, being divorced from them. You're not dealing with, okay, what's an institutional failure? It's not an organizational failure, right? You think that both of them together, like both teams, we've got two different organizations, technically two franchises, right? But as an institution, the team is failing. Everybody is failing, and it's dragging the Cuda down, which sucks, because 2-3 years ago, the Cuda were such an exciting team to watch. They were going places, they were getting better, they were developing players, and then at the drop of a dime, it like complete 180, and the same thing was happening with the Sharks, which is what leads me to believe that it is a top-down entire, like, both teams are having the same kind of like mentality. They need to shake the same things up. I don't know if it's new coaching. I don't know if they need to make like bigger trades or whatever it is, but something needs to change within the organization, because it's really easy to be like, we hate losing, we need to win, guys, and then do the things to build the mindset to actually win some hockey games if you would like to remain a member of a professional hockey league. Because it's truly embarrassing. Sure, they're not the only team with 51 points, and San Diego, you don't get out of this either because you have 52 points and you're only barely better than the Barracuda. But to be like so like in the bottom where you wake up for multiple seasons every day of multiple seasons and you're like, all right, did the Barracuda lose and how badly? Like that's not a place to be. It's not good for the players.
And it's not like the players are like they're bad or the organization's lacking in talent. I mean, you have Daniil Gushin over here with 43 points. You got, Ozzy Weissblatt, their first round pick a couple of years ago. It's got to be a culture or systemic thing. I mean, how else can you explain, Leon Gavanka was putting up some really good numbers there from the blue line as he had done in Manitoba before and then in San Jose. And it had just something happened where he was like, I deuces, I'm going back to Germany and I'm not playing in this organization anymore.
Yeah, it's affecting everything. And we've said so many times, it's not the talent. They have the talent. Like this team should be so much better than they are. They got 10 games left, I guess, to prove that they aren't the absolute worst of the worst in the league. But it's the culture's got to change. The mindset's got to change. The attitude's got to change. It's got to become it's got to become winners win and you do whatever it takes and not just, well, we should be winning, so why aren't we winning?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Full agree points on that one. So in keeping with winners and the whole playoff spiel that we got going on here, I kind of want to take a look at what are if okay, full stop, we don't go into any April and it's just, playoff matchups are kind of as is. And kind of take a look up and down the line, kind of what we're looking at here and which first round matchups really kind of, jump out at us. Now, for me personally, Charlotte and Wilkes, or no, that wouldn't be Charlotte. That would be Charlotte and Lehigh, which was Sam's old beat, which would have been awesome because it would have been Sam and Zach going at it. And like just the personalities kind of bouncing off it would have been great. Maybe round two, but I think I'm gonna go back to the North, and I'm gonna let you take this one away. But if the North happened right now, you have Laval, who's on the up, and you got Cleveland, who's kind of coming on the down. Now that's the Blue Jackets' fault in a large part. And once the playoffs start, they're going to be getting a lot of that back. But is the mojo going to be there? And Laval's like, we're already rolling, and this train's coming. Like, are the Monsters on upset alert? Do you think?
I don't know. They got to get through the Marlies first. Laval's going to get through the Marlies if it goes. The thing is, I think they could. Toronto is one of those teams that has the same identity as their parent organization. That's all I'm going to say. But so, yeah, let's say Laval gets through Toronto and Cleveland gets through Rochester. And the Val also gets through Syracuse. And so it comes down to Cleveland and Laval. I think that would be a closer series than anybody anticipates. If we're being honest.
Once that wheel gets turning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but I still think it would be a closer series than anybody anticipates. Remember when Laval went up against Springfield? And it was like Springfield should have just like swept Laval, and they couldn't do that. And all of their wins were like a struggle. They fought for wins against Laval, and there was a crutch, and somebody was like waving a crutch in the crowd. Remember that? I remember that.
I remember that. Yeah.
So I think it would be something more similar to that, And I feel like that's kind of. I think that's going to be the North. I think. No matter who makes it in, final playoff time comes around and we've got the final like bracket made, and there's no more speculation. Everybody has like X's next to their names because everybody's like clinched their playoff spots. I think that the North is going to be this year's like battle of the like Thunderdome. Like the North is going to be Thunderdome this year. It's so close. It's closer than it's ever been, and we're always waiting on the North. Like it's always coming down to the last games played in the North to determine like the playoff brackets and seeding and all of that. And I think this year in particular, the like all of those teams are struggling in the same ways. They're struggling with injuries and they're struggling with call ups and just running into brick walls and all that stuff. So I think it truly doesn't matter. Because, like, honestly, like, the Americans could take it. Like, the Americans could literally just, like, come out of the North, like, the winners, even though, like, let's be so real. Like, it totally should be Syracuse. Like, they've just been getting better and better, every season. They've just been getting more and more exciting to watch. But, like Rochester could totally take it. Because the North is, like I said, they are, like, they're all built the same. They all follow the same blueprint.
How much blood is there going to be between Laval and Belleville this weekend?
Probably, well, there's so much bad blood between those two teams. Everybody thinks that, like, it should be the Rocket and the Marlies. Like, that should be the rivalry because of the parent organizations. But like the Marlies have been around for a lot longer than the Rocket have. But Belleville and Laval came in around the same time, and they have hated each other ever since. Those matchups are always bloodbaths, and if it's not like fighting or just like being really rough and aggressive on the ice, some goalie or another is hemorrhaging goals. That's gotta be like the best matchup. If you want to watch really good hockey, watch the Laval Rocket and the Belleville Senators play on some random Wednesday, like in the middle of the season. It's gonna be the best hockey you have seen all season.
Well, I'm probably going to be tuning in this weekend, so it's not a random Wednesday. It's very much like implication Saturday, but I'm going to be all about it.
Yeah, and they're on a back-to-back this weekend. They got Friday, tomorrow, and Saturday. Like I truly expect them to split that series for like the entire history of these two teams battling it out with each other. They tend to split the series. It's just, I don't know. It's wild. They hate each other. They hate each other, these two teams. And again, they entered the league like around the same time and all that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, that's the rivalry, I think, in the North. Every other team has like seen other teams come and go, and they just pummel the other teams into oblivion, whereas like the Rocket and the Senators truly have to like kick and scream and like scratch each other's eyes out to win against the other one.
It's one of my favorite aspects of this sport. Now, we just passed what is known here in Michigan as National Turtle Day, but it was the brawl between the Red Wings and the Colorado Avalanche that really epitomized the 90s and like what a blood rivalry looks like. And it's just kind of the natural evolution of the game. You don't see a whole lot of that on the regular, but there's just like snapshots of it where it's like, oh, here comes, Boko on Belleville, and here's Laval with their 1,000 penalty minutes on the season already.
I know they did it. I'm so proud of them.
and it's like it's you talking about just like that hate, especially when you're so tight in the playoffs, and it's like you can knock your rival out, and well, there's still a lot of time left, but you can just put them down into that hole. It makes it so much harder to climb out of. It really kind of, you see some of that bad blood coming in, and sometimes it looks like a Wednesday night D League at 11:30 at night, and you just want to kind of get home in the morning. But I love that kind of stuff, and again, it's a bit of a snapshot of the 90s, not quite kind of, Wild
Yeah,
West.
there's no Patrick Waugh coming in from his crease, like right across the other blue line. No, flying like punches, none of that. But one of my favorite things about the games between Laval and Belleville is always that either nothing gets called or everything does. I'm talking there's games where refs can't see, and then there's games where everything is called by the book. And there's no in between. Nothing gets missed. Both teams get penalized for everything, or nobody does, and they just get to murder each other. And it either way, no matter what it is, the hits get harder every period. The chances get riskier. The goalies get more and more frustrated. The saves get bigger. It's good hockey. Laval versus Belleville is good hockey every time. I've never seen a game where I'm like, wow, this is boring. Why did I tune into this?
I wish I could say the same thing about the Wolves this year, but you know what? That's the price you pay for independence, I guess. I mean,
yeah, the United States learned that too, and they had to almost declare bankruptcy in like the early 1800s because they realized that it's much harder to lead when you don't have the backing of a monarchy.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Chicago is going to have France come out and save their day at the 11th hour.
They won't, because Laval's too busy worrying about their own problems right now.
Oh man, there's too many jokes that just write themselves. So yeah, I mean, let me take a look at the other games that are kind of going on this weekend with I'm thinking big implications. Sorry to any Islanders fans out there, but I really don't care about what the Bridgeport, the artists formerly known as the Sound Tigers, are doing, because
they're not doing anything important.
Yeah, you guys can go hang out with Chicago and San Jose and do your thing again.
Yeah, but it's truly not important. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I'm looking at a team on the bubble here, like Springfield. Those Thunderbirds. They're they're going at Hartford and at Utica this weekend. Hartford's another team that's right in the middle of that Atlantic, trying to gain some positioning in there. So it's like there's unless you're I'm trying to I guess San Jose's got Calgary, and Calgary's going to be playing for something, but even
the Wild and the Stars.
The what?
The Wild and the Stars.
That'll be
That's gonna be a good one.
That's some America's Heartland Central Division action. You know how much that fires me up.
And they're both vying for basically the same spot.
Right. Iowa's kind of like
it's the green. They're green. They're all green.
They're all green. Oh no, we love a green matchup. And I was just kind of like they're hanging around just long enough to be, annoying. And I feel like that's the kind of team this point in the year. Like imagine Texas has the chance to jump up past Rockford, which in the Central would mean they get out of that little play-in round that every division seems to have now. But I can just totally see them going up against Iowa and looking ahead in their schedule and just tripping up. And now you got the Iowa.
They drop out, yeah.
Just ha 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 ha, and I can see that happening, but I was not out of it. I mean,
no, they're truly not. They could claw their way back in. And I hope they don't, because they used to be the Arrows and I miss the Arrows. But at some point, we gotta see some new blood coming out of that Central. And if it's Iowa, I'll put my full support behind them. I'm a big Wild fan. Go Midwest. I don't know.
I like it. I mean, hey, I'm all for the Midwest here. I just the Griffins, I guess, kind of Detroit bias kind of comes in when it's Iowa, because Jesper Wallstedt and Sebastian Cossa at 21 years old each are going to be compared to each other for the rest of their lives because of the draft. And so if I see the Wild advancing past the Griffins, there's going to be a lot of really bad takes on Twitter. And I'm trying to like ignore a lot of that in my life, but I don't want to have to deal with that. I just
Yeah, that's so fair. But I always have a soft spot for like Minnesota and their affiliates, obviously, for like super valid reasons. Um, and I truly do always like want to see Minnesota succeed because like if you're gonna sell the North Stars down to Texas, like at least be better than they were. Like that's all I have to say. Kind of mad about it, but um, and then like if you're gonna steal Houston's favorite sports team, like at least be better. But like whatever, that's all I gotta say. I'm mad about it. I went to so I went to the old barn, like my old barn, earlier today to go to the pro shop to check some stuff out because I'm currently on the hunt for new gear. And first of all, nobody sells goalie equipment. Second of all, nobody sells full right goalie equipment. So I went to the old barn and it's like one of those things. They still have all of the like arrows like branding up on it. It's called the Aerodrome. It was literally built in partnership with the Houston Aeros and everything. I miss it so much. And we super have a Minnesota bias. I'm not gonna lie, we have a Wild bias because they used to be our NHL team. We saw a bunch of great players. We need to watch Marco Scandella. We know how much I love stay-at-home defensemen, especially Marco Scandella. So we got to see, a bunch of players like Darcy Kemper and everybody come up through the AHL. Like all these players that I love now, I get to watch them play when they were still babies. And yeah, so we still have like that bias. So I still kind of have like a Minnesota bias. Like I don't like root for their success, but I also like kind of like high-key like love it when they win. So yeah, Iowa for me. I'll be putting my support behind Iowa.
I can respect it. They can have the 5th spot. If they go out there and they get it, then I'm going to be happy for you. You're going to have 2 teams over there in the 5 spot. It's going to be kind of tough, but I hope they make it. I hope they just for your sake. So, obviously we can't kind of really go down the line and like the biggest games. I'm a little biased in saying like I'm gonna tune in for the Griffins at the Wolves on Friday. I almost said tomorrow, but technically it would be today. Well, because I got double beat duty, so that it's always easiest for me when they just like, hey, why don't we just take 2 of the beats and they put them in one rink, and that
True.
makes my job easy. But
you don't have to write one article at that point.
Exactly. But you got a lot of games going out there in the Pacific, obviously. Colorado, Abbotsford's going to have a lot of implications there. You got some of the top teams beating up on some of the bottom teams. Tucson
and San Diego should be fun because like San Diego is one of those teams where it's like when they don't need to, they pull it out. Mm-hmm. So like either they're going to get absolutely torched or they are going to finally do what Wile E. Coyote never could and crush the Roadrunners. Like,
oh God, could you imagine?
Like one of 2 things is going to happen. It's not going to be a tight
game. If they don't have some kind of like winning game day graphic of like the anvil on top of the Roadrunner, then they're really missing an opportunity here.
Truly.
So, I think we got it all covered. Is there any like closing, like let's check this out for this weekend kind of vibe we got going on?
Yeah, honestly, it's something like it's a team we haven't really talked about that much, like Henderson. Yes. Henderson's going up against Baco, so like that's gonna be an interesting one. I know it doesn't really much matter for the Condors, like they're gonna work their way, through the playoffs and everything. But like for Henderson, again, a team still really finding their identity that's kind of struggled with it in a way that like Coachella Valley hasn't. I think like going into the end of this season is going to be really telling for Henderson, especially I think, don't they have like it's a bunch of like divisional matchups like coming up for them?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure in the Pacific, everyone's just playing the Pacific.
Yeah, so it's going to be really telling. See how many points can they kind of like squeeze the life out of. and see who can they kind of play buffer to and kind of hold off, and who kind of shoots ahead of who. Just kind of having to revolve around the Silver Knights. I think that's going to be something interesting to watch as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I like it. They're not like out of it. They're 13 points behind Abbotsford for that last spot, so it's like it's a long shot, but
yeah, I mean, they're still going to play disruption.
Yeah,
you know, they're going to. I think going around like getting through Henderson is going to be how you determine the seeding for the rest of that division. Is how do you play against Henderson, because they have the ability to ruin your night. If they show up and they play their style of hockey, they might not make it into the playoffs, but what they are going to do is they are going to absolutely ruin the seeding in that division.
It's gonna be the Iowa. You know, they might not make it in, but they're gonna be that pebble thrown underneath the lake on heading in and just ruin your momentum. And now, we thought we had an easy matchup, but here's Tucson.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Hey,
So I think
I love it.
Yeah, that's who I honestly think we should be watching out of the West is Henderson, and like Iowa. Just they're absolutely going to be the thorns on the side. We know that the North and the Atlantic are going to be fighting each other like up and down the standings, and I think it's really fun to see where one team can really make or break another team's chances.
Spoiler alert, unless, of course, you're San Jose, but everyone else got to keep out for them spoilers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think now all that it is just letting the games play, and let's see where this takes us. So that's going to be.
I can't wait to be so wrong about everything that's come out of my mouth, and then I have to defend the
know.
fact that I even watch hockey.
I know. I got to go out here and defend myself like I know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Well, for those who have reached this far, thanks so much for joining us this week. I mean, we're going to be here every step of the way, going over playoff action here. I mean, it's almost playoff action. It's for a lot of these teams, it's basically playoff action. But
it's getting ready. It's adjusting your game and kind of figuring out what lines work against some higher quality talent.
Exactly. But from Andrew Rinaldi and Big D, this is the AHL pre-show. I'm sorry, it's a Texas thing. I see the A&M and I'm thinking like Dallas in my head. I know it's Houston, but sorry, everything's just Dallas and
no, I hate Dallas.
Well, that's congratulations. You're associated with Dallas.
As a city, like Toronto versus Montreal, like doesn't work.
Oof. Well, it's working for the last 15 seconds of this episode.
I doubt that sincerely. I'm D.
Now it's going to be 30 seconds.
And I don't mean Dallas.
Thanks again for joining us, folks. We will catch you next week.